Good evening, colleagues. Evening, everyone.
Good evening, Chairperson.
Hey, how are you, Towan? Long time.
I'm fine, Honorable Chair. Thanks. And you?
Yes. Can I greet Mayor Kola Pakat? How are you, Majoro?
Good evening, Honorable Chair. I'm good, and you?
How have you been? It's so
Okay.
good to see you.
Good to see you too, Chair, and the honorable
Yes.
members.
The members are still, some of them are checking out from Parliament. The Parliament was still on, but I'm just trying to let them come. We're gonna start soon. Let me get some of them. Sure.
That's
Thank
fine.
you. So,
Thanks, Honorable Chair.
okay. But I don't see the team from the Cities Network. None of
I'm
them
going
is.
to check them. I haven't seen Sichole yet, too.
That's what I'm saying. That's why.
Let me check on them quickly, Honorable Chair.
Okay, it's fine. Greetings, did the G4C? Did the G4C?
Good evening, Honorable Chair.
How's your evening?
I'm fine, Honorable Chair. And how are you?
Are you good?
I'm fine, Chair. I'm fine. Thanks. You're also fine.
It's good to see you in the platform.
Yes, yes. No, thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Siton,
Person, how are you?
who are your other members of the Cities Network? I only see one executive mayor.
Well, Executive Mayor is here in his capacity as the chairperson of the Council of the South African Cities Network.
Okay.
Yes, so I
Where
am
the other members are which ones, which metros are you a part?
all metropolitan municipalities chair are members except Cape Town that has
All
submitted.
metros except Cape Town.
Yes,
It
and
means
most
it's eThekwini,
it's eThekwini,
Ekurhuleni,
Ekurhuleni,
Joburg,
Johannesburg, it's
Tshwane,
Tshwane,
yes,
it's Nelson Mandela,
Nelson Mandela,
and Buffalo City.
Buffalo City.
Yes, and
That's where the executive mayor comes from.
correct. And then you have left out Msunduzi. It's not a metro, but it's one of the aspirant metro.
It used to be a city of choice, those old days. Those glory days of the city. I don't know what happened then.
I am not going to respond.
You don't want to comment?
No, hey, I will get myself chopped.
Okay, it's fine. It's
That would be
fine.
very
I think
career limiting, Stoll.
yo, Chairman, you say that.
That would be very career limiting to comment on Msunduzi.
They always say, don't throw stones when you're staying in a glass house. No, it's okay. Then we're going to start. We're just waiting for the members. Some will still at the house. I've asked them to, they are coming.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, I'm not feeling
Welcome.
I'm not feeling very well. I may not stay the duration of the meeting.
Okay.
But
As long as you are here,
yes.
as the chairperson of the council.
Yes, Chair.
It's okay. Hadebe with an H, welcome. I think Honorable Bring has been here for quite some time.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Bring has been here for quite some time. Honorable Khornevald as well have been here for quite some time. Honorable Tho is in our midst. And it's myself. Shirin, can we start at the meeting while others will be joining us so that we don't spend a lot of time here if need be?
Yes, we can.
We can.
We can. Eh?
Yes, Chair.
Sure. The other colleagues will join us as we progress. Okay. If that is the case, then I think in future, I was asking this, Sitole, It
Yes,
will
Chair.
be best if we invite all these metro mayors who are members to also attend this meeting. I think I was checking with my committee secretary earlier to say that she sent the invitation only to yourselves. Should think in future we'll have to invite all these other cities, including the mayor of Umsundus.
Correct, Chair. I think there will be a lot of value in that because I think
That's how we should
Yeah.
best deal with that. Yes, I think that's how we should deal with that. Okay, colleagues, I think then we need to start with our meeting. I want to welcome all of you present. I've greeted DDG Temba Fosi, this acting DDG Nkashe in our midst as well. Then the ministerial support staff, I see Tovani, I see Toivo, I see Brian. Whom else did I miss? And also the colleague Rufus from the DG's office. Sharon, do we have apologies for this meeting? You can quickly assist me on that one.
We do, Chairperson. There's apologies from the Minister, and apology from Deputy Minister Bapela. Deputy Minister Tau is in the plenary. He said he'll join as soon as the plenary is done.
Okay. Is which Deputy Minister Bapela or Tau?
Deputy Minister Tau, Chairperson. Deputy Minister
Okay.
Bapela won't be able to attend the meeting this evening.
Yes, can the colleagues from his office inform him, Deputy Minister Tau, that this meeting is approved? Ne? He can come this side as well. The only person that I've allowed to remain that side is the whip of the committee, because she's also the duty whip in Parliament now. I suspect Honorable Plaza is still eating. He said he hasn't had a meal. He's been in meetings the whole day. He's going to be joining as soon. But then I think let's then start with the meeting. To welcome you, Chairperson of the Council, Executive Mayor Pakati, and the CEO, Mr. Sithole Mbanga. You will recall that it has been a year since the committee last met with the South African Cities Network. This is when we received induction on the role and the responsibilities of the Cities Network, as well as the summary of the activities. We also discussed the network's flagship publication, the State of the Cities Report, which has been coming out every 5 years to coincide with the local government electoral cycle. The latest State of the Cities Report dates back to 2016, and the presentation by the network indicates that we can expect the next report within the current financial year, which ends 31st March 2021. The purpose of today's meeting is to receive the latest update from the Cities Network in relation to its objectives of promoting good governance and management in South African cities. Also to analyze the strategic challenges facing these cities, and also promoting shared learning partnership between the different spheres of government to support the management of the country's cities. Over the past 12 months, the committee has had numerous interactions with various cities around these matters, and we have not heard much from the Cities Network, even when we interacted with its 9 member cities on their financial and the governance challenges, especially those stemming from the current pandemic, that's COVID-19. We note in your presentation that you are developing plans and programs dedicated to addressing COVID-19 related challenges in the cities. Although the Cities Network is not a statutory body and plays more an advisory role to the member cities, it is still important to hear its voice on these matters, given the increasingly influential role you play in defining and framing the country's urban agenda. As a non-statutory body that does not engage in any implementation activities in cities, the cities network is exempt from reporting requirements of the Public Finance Management Act, including the tabling of annual reports and annual performance plans in Parliament. However, one must emphasize this, that as the committee, we will be failing on our oversight responsibility if we do not engage the cities network to account on its annual grant from the Department of Cooperative Governance. During the year 2019-20, this amounted to 7.8 million, and in the current financial year, it is 7.5 million, and also indicated in your presentation. This is what you are actually saying. These are the amounts that you have got. But this may also be very small amounts from the network's perspective, given your high operational demands. But as a committee, we believe that every cent of the taxpayer money is worth accounting for. We are also then sensitive to yourselves with the declining financial position due to diminishing funding resources. On behalf of the committee, we would like to wish you success as you launch an aggressive fundraising drive to keep your work and also to keep the work of the Cities Network going. With these few words, I want to welcome you, and I'll hand over to you, Chairman of the Council, Councillor Pakati, to make a brief introduction to the presentation that the CEO is going to present. Over to you, Councillor Pakati.
Thank you very much. Greetings to you, Chair. Greetings to the members of the Portfolio Committee. Greetings to Deputy Minister Tau and the leadership, the administrative leadership of the department. Let me express our appreciation on being invited to present our operational plans to this committee. I am here joined by the CEO of the Cities Network, Mr. Stolembang, who is going to take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks very much, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. Chair, I don't know whether I should be sharing a screen, or is it that Sherin is going to share our presentation, because I tried earlier.
Yes, sir. You can share the screen, Stole. Share the screen.
It says here the host has disabled my screen sharing. So
you didn't assist Stole, then can you assist Stole? Yeah, I think assist.
Chairperson, whilst that is taking place, I would like to thank you and your entire committee again on behalf of the South African Cities Network. And I think the chairperson of the South African Cities Network has already expressed his appreciation for your committee inviting us here. You do indicate thanks very much, Sharon. You do indicate in your introduction that we are not a statutory entity, and that despite that, you find it very necessary that we should come and account here. Indeed, Chair, I'll proceed by saying, if we can just move straight to slide number 4, Sharin, thanks very much. Chair, just to remind the meeting, Chair, in as much as the South African Cities Network is not a statutory entity, the South African Cities Network was established as a partnership between the metropolitan municipalities. At the time, they were 6 the National Department of COCTA, at the time it was called DPLG, as well as SALGA. In addition to the 6 metropolitan municipalities, you had Umsunduzi, Buffalo City, and Mangaung, who at the time of establishment were referred to anecdotally as aspirant metros. And that was because I think at the time of establishment in 2002, we could all see that urbanization or the phenomena of people moving from different spaces and congregating towards what we popularly know as cities or urban municipalities was gaining momentum. And I think that's a world or a global trend. So we were not acting in contrast to what was happening throughout the world. So at the time of establishment, indeed, the department committed itself to supporting the South African Cities Network, and it has never wavered in its support for the South African Cities Network in light of the work and the intelligence that the South African Cities Network produces in relation to how urbanization is playing itself out and impacting on the institutions of the 9 municipalities. Whereas, Chair, the Cities Network was established under the auspices of these municipalities, the work of the South African Cities Network goes beyond the geographies of the member municipalities or participating municipalities. Indeed, we cover approximately the 30 largest municipalities in the country by geography, which means all the intermediary cities, Umhlatuze, Rustenburg. So the research work that we conduct, Chair, goes beyond the geographies of the metros. Chair, as I make that particular introduction and in front or in the presence of the chairperson of council, I would like to thank you for suggesting that the next time when we come to your meeting, we should invite the mayors from these municipalities. And I think, yes, indeed, to have a discussion with them. I think it's time that the portfolio committee, in order for it to understand the operational pressures faced by municipalities, it's important for them to have a meaningful engagement with the mayors. We will take that up when we host our annual general meeting at the beginning of next year, towards the end of January. We will share with the council the invite that you have offered. I did hear the chairperson also suggesting that we have not been party to your discussions in relation to how cities have been responding to the COVID phenomena. The truth of the matter, chairperson, is that we are part and parcel of a committee that National Treasury set up, which is chaired by DDG Mali Jeng Ngaleni, which every Friday is evaluating how COVID is being responded to by the various cities. So we are quite up there from a point of view of being updated. But thanks very much for raising that particular issue. Shireen, we can skip the next slide and go straight to slide number 6, which is the executive summary of what we are presenting here. Chairperson, the Cities Network, as you indicated, every 5 years, and along the lines of the term of office in municipalities, we produce a document called the State of South African Cities Report. And we have just completed that document as well this year. So we are readying ourselves to launch that particular report. As soon as we get a sense of when the elections are likely to be. In fact, even prior to that, Chair, we would have launched some of the iterations that come out of the State of Cities report. The focus of this year's State of Cities report, and it's themed under governance. The focus is on governance. We have said everything and anything about the State of South African Cities Network, but we felt this time that from all angles, when we analyze what is really happening in South African cities, the problems are centering around the issue of governance. Yesterday, I listened and I was at pains, Chairperson, if I may say, to listen to the presentation by Mangaung. And the more I listened, the more I felt this was more a financial report to the steering committee. And finance, yes, is an important aspect of what's happening in cities, but it is not the only thing. I was wishing that yesterday, Chair, the colleagues from Mangaung would have shared with you how it is that the citizens of Mangaung are experiencing to be governed by the current government by the current local government in Mangaung. Unfortunately, that was not to be. I think, as I'm indicating, the report was more a financial, took more of a financial posture. I was also hoping, Chair, that the portfolio committee yesterday could have had the benefit of asking the city management what is the state of the administration in that particular city, because that's part and parcel of it. So the engine in the city of Mangaung is also falling apart. Of course, I had not been invited to make those comments, but this is the opportunity for me to say the state of South African Cities Network is not going to be only about finances. It looks at the economy, it looks at the inclusive agenda, it looks at the sustainable agenda, and these are things that were not visited at yesterday when Mangaung was reflecting on its own state. It also looks at good governance, as well as it also looks at the long-term city development strategy. So those are the frames. But as I'm indicating, the focus for next year, for this State of South African Cities State of Cities report is primarily anchored around the issue of governance. So that's the one thing that we are promising to bring to the committee. And I suspect what we could then do, Chair, and I'm being suggestive here, is that when we come with that particular report to share it with the portfolio committee, it will be opportune for the mayors that are leaders of these respective municipalities that make up the membership of the South African Cities Network to be invited, and so that as we talk about the content, it could then lead us to the substantive discussion that you are yearning for as the chairperson. I am now moving to slide number 8, Shireen, which is 2 slides down. Yeah, skip that one. So what are the programmatic outputs that the portfolio committee should be looking at? We've been looking at the city's response to the post-COVID environment. So we are busy with that particular work. As I've indicated, the State of Cities report is ready to be published. The State of City Finances will be published at the beginning in the first quarter of next year. So again, there's another research project that the portfolio committee can look forward to. The expanded public works program, there's an annual report that we produce that gives you a sense of what is happening in the EPWP program across all of these cities. And then the State of Urban Safety report will also be published. And then the next is the Spatial Determinants of Wellbeing version number 3 report. Essentially, Chair, what the Spatial Determinants of Wellbeing report is, we are looking at the current spatial configuration of cities, and we make the call about whether or not they have been designed with efficacy. And I think we've all been saying that the apartheid space is not efficient. So the question is, how is democratic local government in these specific municipalities responding to the challenge of reconfiguring the spaces? Are we really getting to what Johannesburg at some point in its life called the corridors of freedom, where there was a huge effort on the part of the city to restitch that city and make it more inclusive, make it more efficient through a transport-oriented type of development or agenda. So the Spatial Determinants is a report that we produce across all of these 9 cities. Needless to say, Chair, that at the beginning, when you asked me who are the members, I did articulate the fact that the city of Cape Town withdrew its membership of the South African Cities Network in the year 2016. Notwithstanding that withdrawal, we still work with colleagues and peers in the city of Cape Town to produce reports across all these sectors that I have just mentioned here. The next report, Chair, is the review of the urban governance research, which is something that I would rather not speak to it at this point in time. And then the last thing that we do in conjunction with the Department of Cooperative Governance is to support the department in the implementation of the integrated urban development framework. So those are the things that the chairperson could be looking at. From a governance point of view, we have a board, an independent board from council. So Executive Mayor Phakathi is the chair of council, and immediately underneath the council is an independent board. And it's quite interesting that that board is made up of people that were practitioners in cities, by the way. So they have a thorough understanding. So we can never pull wool over the political leadership of the South African Cities Network, because there are people that are vigilant and have great passion about city governance, so to speak. So there's a board that looks at our business plan. We are currently developing a business plan that will be looking at the period 2021 to 2026. It looks at the risks of the organization. It is equally then, the board is equally the owner of the strategy. So once we have put together a strategy, then the board owns that particular strategy. And of course, there are regular and ongoing interactions between the board and its board committees. We have about 3 committees that make up the board, and of course, regular and ongoing engagements with the city. I'm not going to speak, Chair, to marketing and communications at this point in time. I will probably go back to it in the event that there is a question that relates to how are we marketing and communicating our work. And I suspect, in part, to be truthful, this issue of marketing and communication is not my area of competency. In fact, I have been blamed in my term as the CEO of the Cities Network for having under-marketed the role that the South African Cities Network has played. And I have accepted that blame. And we are putting, therefore, a marketing and communication strategy to respond to what we have been told. If we go to slide number 11, Shireen, I'm skipping the pages where there's pictures of people. So in summary, if the chairperson wanted to know what are our strategic objectives, those are our strategic objectives. Optimizing our financial management. The chairperson of all organizations that will have visited you in your committee, the Cities Network is possibly the least expensive. We've never had a budget of more than 50 million rands at any given point in time. So we try to run a very clean, efficient, and a lean machine, and exploit partnerships so as to be able to maximize the fact that we need less money to be impactful. So we work with reference groups. So say, for instance, the Buffalo City will be the host of a reference group that looks at financial management. Umsunduzi will be a host of a reference group that looks at HIV and AIDS or social inclusiveness or whatever the case might be. And that strategy helps us to optimize our financial management. And that being said, Chair, as you also said when we started, we still require resources. In fact, the fact that Mangaung, the fact that Cape Town, and the fact that Umsunduzi have not been up to speed with paying their dues to the South African Cities Network, and of course, totally, Cape Town having totally withdrawn, it means that we are always approximately 14 million rands short at any given point in time. Again, without picking on anyone, it was very interesting to listen to Mangaung again, you know, and portfolio committee members were asking. I mean, I remember a committee member, Mam Kize, yesterday asking the question how it is that Mangaung has arrears in certain spaces, particularly on the issue of electricity. And yet, in other instances, there's under expenditure. So that seems to be quite contradictory. And part and parcel of that under expenditure is the fact that Mangaung has, for the last 2 years, not paid its dues to the South African Cities Network. And that really puts us in a bad financial position. Strategic objective number 2, to keep ourselves as a well-governed organization. Chair, at no stage has this organization attracted a negative audit report, at no stage since its existence. And we have managed to keep it like that. And we strive to keep it like that at any given point in time. Even this year, as we have started the audit, we are quite certain that we'll come out on the other side of that audit process with a clean slate to enable the objectives of the Cities Network through an HR delivery strategy. Yes, we're doing that. We are a secretariat of about 24 people at the end of the day, and we do our best. We also work with students. We rotate students. So every year we've got about 4 interns that come through our system. And at the end of 2 years, we will come up with about 8 students that have gone through, and they are researchers, most of them. And most of them have been really appreciative. Strategic objective number 4, the work of the Cities Network. Collating, collecting, analyzing, disseminating what's happening in the city space. And strategic objective number 5, to promote a good learning. Chair, the next slide talks about our operating model. So we've got stakeholders, we look at global trends, and we look at local trends. All of those components literally inform how we get into a strategy as an organization. And so the 5-year strategy that I'm saying we are currently putting together is informed by the fact that we've conducted interviews with all the member municipalities of the South African Cities Network. We've conducted interviews with global partners such as Cities Alliance, the C40. The C40 is a big group of the 40 largest cities in the world that focus on the sustainability. We've conducted interviews with those. And of course, we also look at the local trends. Those give us a sense of what our strategy then becomes. And as a consequence, we end up developing a strategy that is centered around knowledge governance, knowledge generation, knowledge dissemination, and knowledge application. I must confess, Chair, that this issue of knowledge application has really been bugging us since 2016. What does knowledge application mean? Knowledge application implies that as a result of us having generated the research and the results of the research, and secondly, then disseminated them across various stakeholders, both in the public and the private sector. One of the things that we then need to do is to take that knowledge and apply it. By way of example, if Mangaung, and I'm sorry to be using Mangaung, it's just that it's very uppermost in my mind as a result of yesterday's presentation. If Mangaung is in trouble, Chair, and then Sithole and Luncedo and the chairperson and Jeff Bigford and everybody else stand up and go to Mangaung and say, colleagues, we are your peers, we are here to help. What is the problem? Can we do analytics of the problem together? And you don't get a response. That becomes problematic to us because it implies that we are not doing knowledge application. And you can only do knowledge application if there is a corresponding acceptance of the offer that you are making. So again, Mangaung for the last 2 years, and I wish I was saying these things in front of them. Mangaung for the last 2 years has really repelled our attempts we were almost like boys proposing to girls, you know, we were repelled over and over again, and we do not know exactly what was the cause. But the presentation that was made yesterday is very telling on how it is that a different approach could have been applied had there been a receptive audience on the part of the leadership of Mangaung. And I'm not saying this to paint the South African Cities Network as better or holier. We did this approach in conjunction with National Treasury. National Treasury has a program called the Cities Support Program. We did a diagnostic in Mangaung 3 years ago. And at the end of that diagnostic, we said we are ready to help you as a city, but we've never received a positive response to that. And so this is not just about the cities network. This is about, this is also about the fact that there have been many of us in the fraternity, in the local government fraternity, including SALGA for that matter, that have been making attempts and overtures to the city of Mangaung. Unlike, for instance, at the moment, we have been working with the city of Johannesburg, and we've been working with Umsunduzi very directly, doing this thing called knowledge application and being able to get them out of the mud. So you don't hear more today about Umsunduzi being in trouble. Yes, the administration is still there. And there are certain things that are happening in that particular city, but it is not so much in trouble, comparatively speaking, than Mangaung. And I wish one day we could have that debate with colleagues in Mangaung, perhaps mediated by people like yourself, Chairperson, who take a very neutral view on how these things take place. So as a consequence of our work, Chair, when we calculate, we touch about 8 cities, and we're saying 8 cities because Cape Town is not there. And then 12 million people. That's, I'm sure you will understand, Chair, this is more of a selling, marketing speak more than anything else. If you go to the next slide, I've spoken to this slide, Chair, already, that we conduct our research across themes. So there's a long-term city development strategy. There's the well-governed city, which looks at the institutional makeup of the city. The productive city is basically the economy of the city. The inclusive city is about how it is that the city can, utilizing its powers, become more inclusive, particularly given the fact that we come from backgrounds of division, we come from backgrounds of poverty and the lack of equality and equity in society. And that's what that agenda seeks to do. And the last one is the sustainable development agenda, which is not just about the green, it also is about issues beyond the green. Issues around finances, for instance, become quite important there. If you go to the next slide, Chair, perhaps I'm not going to speak too much into that slide. I think at the top of the presentation, I spoke about the fact that we look at global trends and local trends to then influence how it is. If you go to the next slide, we review the work that we do. We have a strategy, and then we implement. Whatever it is. So that's the general approach that we have been utilizing. And Chair, in the interest of more information, we have just completed an organizational performance review of the South African Cities Network for the last 5 years. We will be willing to share with the committee that particular report so that the Chair can then look at how it is that we are reviewed by organizations in the fraternity in terms of the performance. If you go to slide number 17, Shireen, which is the SWOT analysis. Today it's no longer called SWOT. It's the weaknesses are called challenges. So it's the SCOT analysis. So our SCOT matrix is quite clear, Chair, and you will see this towards the biggest, the last slide. Our biggest threat at the moment as an organization is our ability to be financially stable. It's a serious challenge that we are facing as the South African Cities Network. And by so saying, I'm saying this against the backdrop that I've given, that some of the member municipalities have not been paying up their dues, but also there's an increasing demand for our work. And we think we are in a period where, unfortunately, because of the urgency of certain demands on the fiscus generally, the ability to think and to strategize and to innovate is not going to be prioritized by generally all of society. So, and we're in the space of innovation, and that's where the biggest issue is. Our strength, Chair, is this thing of knowledge generation and peer learning. But I think importantly, and I think the Chair, you were spot on when you're saying you are inviting the portfolio committee, the mayors of these municipalities. This is the type of advantage that the Cities Network also provides, or opportunity that the Cities Network provides to various sector departments. So if there's a minister who wants to have a discussion with mayors, the Cities Network is there to provide that. If there is a private sector entity that wants to have a strategic discussion on issues, the Cities Network is there to provide that particular value. What are our opportunities? We've been playing a very meaningful role around the district development model. And I'm happy that DDG Themba Fosi is here, because way back, we pioneered and championed the production of the IUDF. And today we see the introduction of the district development model as a very important policy instrument or policy tool that's going to help all of us to drive how it is that various efforts from the private sector converge, from the private sector, the public sector, and just generally everybody, how they converge into a municipal space. So we are quite grateful that the department has managed to do that. If I may go forward to slide 19 of 31, the programmatic outputs in relation to strategic objective number 4, Chair, I did indicate we are in the space of long-term city development strategies. I've made mention of the city finances. So the next slide basically indicates what products or what projects are being implemented under which of the strategic objectives of the South African Cities Network. So they might sound a bit repetitive. Safe to say that, Chair, I did say that one of the work that we're doing, we're looking at how COVID is impacting on cities, not just cities as institutions, by the way, but also the practitioners in cities. A lot of people in the municipalities that are practitioners have been hard hit by the impact of COVID, in how it is that they have to organize their work, in how it is that they have to rearrange things. So it's been quite an interesting challenge. Hence, you see at the bottom there, we have this project called Healing Fields. So it's more discussions that I did indicate we participate in with National Treasury, where we assess what's happening. But this is more at a personal level. Because that has been the case. If you go to slide number 21, Chair, that is the budget of the South African Cities Network. As I indicated, our budget for this year is 45,580,000 thereabout. And as I indicate, it's not enough. If you look on the right-hand side of your slide, it indicates who our sources of revenue are. And as you can see, one of the things that we're beginning to have as a challenge is the fact that there is going over time, the challenge of not having resources on time from municipalities. As you can see, the project costs for this year is 11 million, and then the staff costs are 21 million. And we're hoping that by the time this financial year comes to an end, we will have received all that money so that this picture can then change. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to do all of the work that we want to do. Without going into details on that particular slide, the next slide, it speaks to existing government partnerships. That's slide number 22, Sharon. So the IUDF with COPTA, we continue to do that. The EPWP with the Department of Public Works, and what we call the Built Environment Task Team, which is a task team of people that are in the built environment field, working with the with the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and of course with the National Treasury, and that's internal. On the outside, we're working currently with GIZ on urban safety, and we're working with the AFD, which is the French Development Agency, on the built environment, and that's a 3-year contract. And that was just by way of articulating to the chairperson how it is that our sources of revenue are spent. If you go to the next slide, when we started realizing that we are going to get into financial liquidity problems, we engaged the National Research Fund. After 2 years of negotiations, Chair, I can safely report that we now have research chairs that we have established. So you're supposed to be at the, that's the right slide, Shari. So we have established research chairs in conjunction with the National Research Foundation. Effectively, we're putting the South African Cities Network puts 1 rand against any rand that the National Research Foundation has put. There's 3 research chairs. There's a research chair that's looking at the finding alternative ways of funding municipalities. There's a research chair that's looking at the economies of cities, and there's a research chair that we are yet to establish that will be looking at social inclusion in the various cities. So it's been a very good model. So we put 10 million rands, 5 million rands each partner brings to the table, and we suddenly have 10 million, and then we're able to expand the footprint of the research work that we are doing. We will be engaging in fundraising activities, and that's the next slide, Shireen. We will be engaging in fundraising activities to try to counterbalance the challenge that we are having. We have put together a terms of reference for the establishment of a fundraising committee. We have also put together a request for proposal for organizations that are in the fundraising space to fundraise for the South African Cities Network. Hopefully that effort will yield a good results, and we're quite hopeful that that will be the case. If you go to slide 26, Shireen, it gives you a sense of what the current staff complement is. I did indicate that there's about 24 people that are in the organization, and that slide is a simple articulation of who those particular, what roles rather those particular individuals are playing in the space. If you skip again the communication strategy, so we putting together a communication strategy. I suspect that members of the portfolio committee might have started to see Cities Network. We've been doing a lot of op-eds. All of us in the secretariat are writing, putting opinions about what should be happening in the city, and that's the beginning of a 3-stage marketing strategy that we have put together in response to the fact that we have not marketed the work of the South African Cities Network, but secondly, in response to the fact that we are preparing to launch the State of South African Cities Network. And that's in relation to the issue of marketing. Second last chair slide. I did indicate that we've got a council and we've got a board and we've got a secretariat in that pecking order. We only started putting this board in place, Chair, around about 2017-18. Previous to this, the South African Cities Network did not have a board. It had a council. And the Municipal Finance Management Act, I think as you are aware, Chair, basically called us out and said we cannot operate like that. So we have managed to focus on governance in response to the Municipal Public Finance Management Act, as well as the Systems Act, to make sure that we do not contravene in any way or form the laws of the country when it comes to how it is that we're running organizations. The last slide, Chair, is the risk matrix of the organization. Chair, I have alluded to the fact that the biggest risk that we have is finance. If you look on the left-hand side of the slide, that is a sense of what are our risks. So number one, insufficient funding. Two, we are looking at this thing of voluntary membership model. Remember, the Cities Network was established as a voluntary entity. Because we couldn't establish the South African Cities Network that would end up competing or being in contradiction or being duplicative of the South African Local Government Association. So we were established as a voluntary-based membership. And the risk there is that if an organization, a municipal organization, decides to pack and leave, as Cape Town did, then we are in trouble, and that's a risk. It's reported as moderate at the moment, but with COVID and with the likelihood that a number of municipalities are going to argue that they do not have sufficient funds, that particular risk number two, is likely to start ranking quite upwards, almost competing with the current risk number one. Chair, without going into details on each, I take it that this is clear. So the loss of key staff is a risk to the South African Cities Network. The insufficient utilization of our outputs is something that is a risk. There's a lot of work that we have done, but we think that it has not been sufficiently utilized. The insufficient absorption of Cities Network outputs at a city level and across the value chain is another risk. The reliance on efficient and optimized business processes within the South Cities Network, and suboptimal execution of projects. Obviously, when you don't have money, you start to execute in a very suboptimal way, and those are the consequences. The non-compliance with legislation, I think we've got that under control now. I can safely say that by next year, that particular risk will disappear from our risk register. And lastly, Chair, the growth of the Cities Network of cities under the Cities Network portfolio. And the point there is that there are quite a number of cities, as I indicate. It's not just metropolitan municipalities. The intermediary cities have been knocking at the door of the South African Cities Network, and a decision has been taken by council that we should accept them to become participants. I know that Rustenburg, I know we have started negotiations and discussions with them to see how it is that they can bring shoulder to the urban research work that we are doing. Chairperson, thanks very much and to your committee for your indulgence. I don't know if my own chairperson is still here. Perhaps he would want to make some closing remarks before he hands over to yourself, Chair. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you so much. Chairperson, you want to say something? Closing remarks?
No, Chair. I think Carl has covered almost everything sufficiently.
Sufficiently so. Thank you. Members, can I see a show of hands in the platform? Those who are using cell phones, I've noted Brink already on the platform. The other one that are using cell phones, they will show their faces. I'll see them. Is it only Honorable Brink for now? Colleagues, is it only Honorable Brink who want to interact with the presentation? Okay, proceed, Honorable Brink.
Thanks very much, Chair. It is noted that the SA Cities Network is not a statutory organisation, but it is funded by public money. And I think so there is a very clear obligation to account, even though it's not formally to this committee. And of course, we welcome the presentation and the willingness of the CEO and the chairman of the board to appear before us. Chair, a lot of attention is paid in the presentation and the remarks by the CEO to the funding of the city's network, including fundraising initiatives. CEO spoke about writing op-eds and so on, there's marketing as well, which is all very interesting. But I think the main concern of the committee, South Africans in general, is what value it is that the city's network adds in order to justify its existence, in particular its funding, either from grants of national government departments or indeed the cities, because that's ratepayers' money. And I suppose, Chair, the question that hasn't been conclusively answered, convincingly answered by the city's network, and that's why it keeps getting asked, is should this function not instead be housed within SALGA, given that metros already contribute, I think, about 14 million rand annually to SALGA? What makes the city's network unique? But more specifically, Chair, 5 questions. First, what initiatives can the city's network point to that have brought significant changes, positive changes to member organizations? And here I'm not talking about input necessarily. We've produced this research paper, but outcomes. So the city's network presumably speaks to member organizations and they get positive feedback or negative feedback. What groundbreaking outcome can you point to say this has changed, this has led to this or that metro making that change which was significant? Second question is, what percentage of the city's network's annual budget is spent on salaries? So if you look at your operational expenditure, what portion of that, what percentage of that is spent on salaries, the CEO, the managers and so forth, that was set out? Third question, how much of the research done by the city's network, including research for the State of Cities report, which is your flagship publication, is conducted by external service providers, and how much is done by internal staff, percentage-wise? Fourth question, besides salaries, what are your 2 other largest operational expense items? Last question, has any research been conducted by the city's network on skills and expertise available in the job market to cities, in particular in the professions, engineers, chartered accountants, planners, and so on? Has any research been conducted by the city's network on this with proposals that you can share with the committee? Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Brink. In the absence of the other hands for now, can I ask the CEO and the Honorable Treasurer?
Chair, very, very quickly, I think I have 2 questions. They spoke about Cape Town having left the South African Cities Network. Can they give us the reasons, if there were any reasons that made Cape Town to leave? And secondly, what work has the city network done with regards to turning the industrial development zones into, in terms of analytics? Have they done work in terms of research to develop IDZs and turn these plans into new cities? with necessary amenities and services that define the cities. The last one, Chair, would be pertaining to overpopulation of Johannesburg as a city. What research mechanisms have in place in terms of decentralizing the city to allow people to have a choice and to also go to other new economic opportunities, as it were. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we respond to the two members thus far?
Thanks very much, Chair.
Over to you,
Thanks very much,
CEO.
Chair, and thanks very much to both Honorable Celias Brink and to Honorable Xeza. Chair, in fact, I just want to say one thing that we need to understand is that the effectiveness of the city's network's work has a high dependency on how its work gets to be received by the recipient entities, whether it is a municipality, whether it is the portfolio committee or any other utilizer of our work. So I want to stipulate that as a general point.
Can you put your camera on, please?
At the risk of losing connection.
In a dark place, very dark place. Yeah.
Yes, Chair, but I'm just afraid I don't want to lose connectivity though with my video on. If the Chair would allow me.
Proceed then.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, Chair, I was saying that in response to Honorable Celias, the work of the South African Cities Network has a high dependency on how it gets to be received by the recipient institution, irrespective of the sphere of government that national institution is, including this particular committee. That's number one. So where has the South African Cities Network been effective as part and parcel of an entity that contributes to evidence-based policy production? The New Urban Agenda, for instance, which is a United Nations a policy instrument aimed to drive the world towards a concrete response to urban agenda. South Africa's contribution to the New Urban Agenda was in part through the work of the South African Cities Network. We harvested a lot of the lessons that came out of South Africa, and in that way contributed to that policy by sharing them with various platforms that were created that led to the successful adoption of the New Urban Agenda, I think in the year 2016, if I'm not mistaken. That's at a global level. At a national level, the chapter in the National Development Plan, Chair, that speaks to the human settlements, I just forget what chapter it is, human settlements, was instrumentally driven by focus groups that were made up of city practitioners from not only the participating cities in the South African Cities Network, but general from municipalities, which is a process that we drove for a period of a year and a half to then come up to the conclusion that you see in that specific chapter of the National Development Plan. Lastly, Chair, the Integrated Urban Development Framework was driven solely by the South African Cities Network, which also is the reason why we still serve as the Secretariat of the Integrated Urban Development Framework. And I did indicate, Honorable Celias, that what we are busy doing now is to create the link between the IUDF and the DDM as an implementation tool of the intended levers of the IUDF. So so I've moved from an international space to a national space, and in the form of the INDP and the IUDF. At a local level, what we do on a year-on-year basis, we go to each and every city and determine what their research needs are. And we would make the assumption based on interactions with those respective cities that their research needs are based on what it is that they are doing, especially in the strategy or group strategy departments of those specific cities. And on the basis of that, we will then collate or put together a research program that is informed by that particular research. So directly speaking, what the cities network's value is, if I were just to be simple, directly at a city level, is that it allows cities to work together and thus achieve the economies of scale of working together. And that's what the value is, because in many instances, cities, because they are big institutions for that matter, they tend to work individually and yet on similar issues. Say, for instance, on issues of data, they would all individually go and purchase data from private sector entities. And there's nothing wrong with those transactions per se, but where you are asking for the same information, it's always best to act in such a manner that you achieve the economies of scale that you would derive as a result of working together. Secondly, we've been a voice of cities within the local government fraternity generally. The fact that we have managed over a period of time to get practitioners to sit together, either at a sectoral level or at a non-sector level, to then develop position papers, which position papers sometimes get to be presented in Parliament. For instance, on public transportation, for instance, on the need for cities to become energy producers. Those are all views that we collect as a consequence of the fact that we facilitate that cities act together. So that is quite concrete. I would refrain, Chair, from commenting on the view that Honorable Celias is suggesting, that the South African Cities Network, the work of the South African Cities Network, if that's what I heard, the work that the Cities Network is doing should be conducted under the auspices of SALGA, only because cities are already paying membership dues to SALGA. By saying, Honorable Celias, the problem is that SALGA is very big. So it's quite important to dissect the agenda and the work of SALGA in such a manner that you are providing bespoke services to different institutions. So the principle of a differentiated support becomes applicable in this particular instance. But I'm not the one to make that decision. I think it is the Council of the South African Cities Network. If it feels that no, the work of the Cities Network must be done under SALGA, myself and the board of the Cities Network and the Secretariat will have no voice against that. We will be asked to express our opinions and we will express them. And I think if I were to be asked, I would say to the council must take caution not to get the urban agenda swallowed by the fact that most of the members of SALGA are not necessarily institutions that necessarily drive the urban agenda or are not metropolitan municipalities. So there's pros and cons, and I agree there's efficacy in the view that Honorable Celias has expressed, and it's something I'm sure that will need to be tested. Chair, if you go to slide number 21, and I'm now answering the second question about the salaries in the South African Cities Network. The income and expenditure, and I must submit that is a forecast. We indicate there where the salaries are going to be. So for instance, staff costs, clear in the year 2020, 2021, 21 million, and the project costs, which means the capital expenditure, if you were to use another language, is projected at 11 million. And there's a reason for that. As I indicated, we've got 3 municipalities at the moment that have not paid up their membership at all. And that's leaving us with a huge problem. In fact, I'm at pains to say that there's a possibility that at the end of our financial year in June of 2021, we may have to lay off staff because our situation is becoming untenable. So I apologize for sounding as if I was raising the issue of money to use this meeting for fundraising. I was just reflecting on the reality of how our organization is currently challenged by sustainability. Hence, I am saying we are starting to engage in fundraising activities because we think that the research agenda that the Cities Network is driving is equally important, and it should not be destroyed only by lack of funds. So there's an effort that we are making in that particular respect. And so we're quite transparent about what staff salaries are, and they are there on slide 21. And I'm hoping that the chair is sharing the documentation, so for purposes of transparency. Service providers, independent service providers versus internal research. There was a point in time in the Cities Network when we had a balance in relation to 50% or that margin, 50 internal research, because we've got researchers in-house. But it's not always possible for us to always do the research our work. To do primary research ourselves. Sometimes it's important through strategic partnerships that we strike with academic institutions. For instance, the University of the Free State is one such partner. I have made reference to the establishment of the chairs in conjunction with the National Research Foundation. That's just one other strategy in which, as I indicated, we have put rand for rand between ourselves to then use PhD students in universities to get professors to be the chairs of those research themes, so as to be able to continue doing our work. And it's just one of many strategies that we are currently exploring. At this point in time, in this financial year, the financial year that I am presenting, we are not intent on doing a lot of research. What we are doing, we've gone back to cities and we are determining what their research needs are going to be, so that the 2021 to 2026 business plan is a well-informed business plan from a research agenda point of view. So we are not going to be starting any new research. What we have presented here as the APP is what we are going to be embarking upon. But I want to assure Honorable Siliers that a lot of, in fact, the majority, by far, the majority of our staff are involved in the research work themselves as well. Have we done a work around skills and expertise needed by cities? Not across the South African Cities Network. If I recall, only the Nelson Mandela Bay had given us a specific project to look at skills shortages and expertise that will be required by their city. And that was some 3 years ago when we conducted that particular research, but we have not done it across the 9 cities. And again, I dare say it, with much money, we will possibly be able to do all of these things. I need to emphasize, Chair, that the work that we are doing is demand-driven. We never do research or any work that is not called upon by cities. So where we see shortfalls, it is not a function of us just not thinking about it. It's a function of the fact that we want our work to be demand-driven. Hence, as I indicated earlier, our budget is possibly the smallest that you could, comparatively speaking, see across the various research institutions that are there. I've also indicated that we work primarily with practitioners by establishing what we call reference groups. So there's a reference group on water, or the City Water Managers Forum. There's a reference group on transport. There's a reference group on the sustainable agenda. So we establish those reference groups to make how we work relatively affordable compared to other organizations. Hence, we don't always do primary research. I trust that I have adequately responded to those questions. Honorable Eza is asking the question, why did Cape Town leave the South African Cities Network? So we think that part and parcel, well, we were provided with reasons by the city, but what the city had done, as the city indicated to us at the time, was to go to various departments, which departments do not necessarily work directly with the city's network. At least in the majority of those we are informed, were questioned about the value of the South African cities network. For instance, we don't do tourism we don't work with tourism offices. That doesn't mean we cannot do research on tourism and its impact as part and parcel of the economy. But the reasons we were provided by the city was that most departments in the city of Cape Town say that we do not add value, which we found very, very strange, because as I indicate, up to today, we still work with the practitioners in the city. They still are part and parcel of the reference groups. So we lost that battle, so to speak, after many delegations went to the city of Cape Town. And we are not going to stop going to the city of Cape Town to make them understand the fact that we cannot speak about understanding a South African urban agenda or the governance of South African cities and exclude Cape Town. So notwithstanding the fact that the city of Cape Town ceased to be part of the South African cities network formally, we still interact with the practitioners on the ground. Have we done work around industrial development zones? We have not done work around industrial development zones, Honorable Ceza. However, we have done around the, economic development, and economic development would have, amongst other things, strings of issues around the role of development, industrial development zones. But we have not done research on a particular industrial development zone and whether or not that industrial development zone as an institution in a city is specific. Work we have done really when it comes to institutions that work in the economy is work around development agencies. The Nelson Mandela Development Bay Agency, comparing it to the Johannesburg Development Agency, comparing it to the Tshwane Development Agency, and the likes, including, so if I may just go back, Honorable Celias asked the question of our effectiveness as the South African Cities Network. There is a concept that takes place in most cities, which is called area-based management, which led to the establishment of these institutions called the city improvement districts. And I think Cape Town has it, that runs the city of Cape Town. That concept came from the work of the South African Cities Network, literally. We worked with practitioners looking at urban renewal and how urban renewal could be done effectively, and that led to a situation where it got to be realized that you cannot manage an industrial zone in the same way that you'll be managing an inner city, and therefore the concept of city improvement districts ensued, and then it became reality, and we helped establish them. I think Andrew Borain became the first CEO of the city improvement districts. And by the way, Andrew Borain was part and parcel of the cities network. So the maturation, when things mature, we don't hold them as the South African Cities Network, because anyway, they do not belong to us. They belong to the city. So we haven't done specifically work on industrial development zone. Chair, I must confess, I didn't quite understand the question around decentralization in Johannesburg specifically. I wonder if I could be given the benefit of that question being posed again so that I can answer it adequately.
Chairperson, my assumption is that the city will correct me if I'm wrong, is that there are studies that are done across the world to say that economies that have illustrated that cities can be built, new cities can be built, can then be brought to South Africa in a form of the model say that this is what we have learned from those models. And my assumption is that why I'm talking about industrial development zone is the fact that you then have a plan, given the situation in South Africa of overpopulation. You then have an analysis of how you are going to deal with the overpopulation in cities with a view of turning the industrial development zone into new cities. Hence, then the migration and the balance in terms of the population across, because most of the people, I will tell you about Eastern Cape, where I'm originally from. If you want any economy, any work on a form of stability, you would think of Johannesburg, and that city is actually overwhelmed with a lot of African brothers and many other people from Europe and across the country, resulting in the overpopulation into one area where there is economic activity. My question then becomes, what is the work, the research work done in this regard?
Honorable Brink.
Thank you, Chair. Just a follow-up question. I had two questions. The first was, what percentage of OPEX does the city's network spend on salaries? And my attention was directed to, I think, slide 21, which is somewhat confusing. And then the second question was, how much of the work, the research output and the other work done by the city's network is done internally, and how much is done externally? You know, preferably as some kind of a percentage. Let me tell you why I'm asking the question. So if we look at the figures provided to us, it would seem in 2019, 2020, expenditure by the city's network was about 38.8 million, if I understand this spreadsheet correctly. 38.8 million, 2019-20 financial year. Of that, staff costs were 17.6 million, 45%. And the explanation given on the slide is, well, remember that this is a research organization, and so a lot of our expenses will be on personnel because of research output. Okay. Then in the next financial year, 2020-21, which is the present financial year, the budget, it says here the total expenditure is 29 million, but if you in fact add the figures, I think it's about 40 million. For about 40 million total expenditure for 2020-21, and then salaries have increased to 21.8 million from 17.6 million last year. So, you know, between 45 and 50% of salaries. And with the increase in salaries that we see this year, we've seen almost a concomitant decrease in project costs. So Cities Network is paying more in salaries this year than in projects. And that's why the second question is important, because if you're paying more in salaries than in projects, it's important to know how much of the work that you do is actually done in-house by research staff and how much is done by service providers. Because if you're paying all of these salaries and most of the work isn't in fact done by your internal staff, you've got a problem. You're spending resources in an inefficient way, employing people, but then relying on service providers. That was the purpose of the question. Maybe with that clarification, we can get a clearer answer as to what percentage of the output, the work done by the city's network, is done internally and what percentage is done externally, so we can compare it to these staff expenses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Then there are issues that I also wanted to raise. Can you share with us, there's somebody's microphone that's making a lot of noise. Honorable Flo, can you mute your microphone, please?
I wanted to say something, Chair.
Can you mute your microphone, then you'll say something. You must raise your head properly. I'll note you. Than to cause disruption, please. Yeah, okay. I wanted to understand what lessons can you draw from the extensive reference group work on the EPWP in order to inform the redesign and repurposing of the community's work program? Then the issue that Honorable Brink has raised, I think is just to add more flesh on it. As you check, most of your work, you have commissioned it to technical experts rather than doing it in-house. And then we want to then understand to what extent is the above, to what extent is the absence of an in-house technical expertise a drawback to the work that you are doing as a cities network. Then the other issue that you have done yearly, when you prepare for your flagship publication, the State of the Cities report, you usually hold a conference to aid with the framework, focus, and content of an upcoming State of the Cities report. Will this practice also be implemented for this oncoming report for 2021, bearing in mind the COVID-19 pandemic? And then if that is the case, then what have been the milestone that you have achieved thus far? And what theme will be informing the report? We recently held a meeting with the national and provincial houses of traditional leadership. And their representative affirmed to us that rural areas will remain an enduring future of South African landscape, notwithstanding the rural to urban migration. And then when you look at the projections made by the UN, they also point an increasingly urban future with the share of urban population that is going to increase by 80% in 2050, which suggests that then there may be complete urbanization at some point beyond 2050. And then we want to understand what is your research insight on this rural-urban debate. The other issue that one want to understand, yourself as the custodian of the integrated urban development framework, which recognize urban-rural linkages, what contribution can you offer to make rural areas attractive place to live in, and thereby reduce the pressure of rural-urban migration on the resources of the member cities? Honorable Flo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Another issue of interest is with regard to the poor dysfunctional functioning of poor performance of consequence management in most of our municipalities. So did you develop any effective mechanism that will stop same mistakes not to happen again, as it impacts negatively on the progress of our municipalities? And then the second question is with regard to the poor service delivery in municipalities that you mentioned that you have intervened. Since your intervention, did you yield any good results? I thank you.
Okay. Over to you, CEO and the chairperson. the consent.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not sure if the Chair is still here, but thanks very much indeed. So, Chair, perhaps I think just to be certain that I provide the correct answer in relation to the question that Honorable Cilliers has posed, I would like to take up an offer and respond in writing to the committee so that I give a correct version in relation to his question. Unfortunately, I think the session is being recorded. I can go back to the clip, harvest the question that he has posed so that we can respond to it factually and as well as technically, rather than me providing inadequate responses. But that is just a request that I would like to make. One of the questions that as well Honorable Cilliers has asked is, are we doing more research internally? So yes, it is. We are doing more research internally, but as I indicated, this year, Chair, is not the year of research in this particular financial year. Just because we are closing off a 5-year business plan, we are putting together a new 5-year business plan, 2021 to 2026, which new business plan itself must be informed by the research demands of the city. So we are not starting new research in this particular year. But I beg for Honorable Cilliers and your indulgence, Chair, to take the opportunity to provide a response in writing to the question that he has posed, if that will be possible. Chair, coming back to Honorable Teza, in relation to the question of overpopulation and settlement. Chair, I don't want to, I'm restraining myself to be argumentative, but Honorable Teza indicates or expresses the view that Johannesburg is overpopulated, and so what have we done in terms of research to make suggestions around the creation of new cities? I would like to start responding, Chair, by saying Johannesburg perhaps is not just overpopulated, but it is also poor settled. And I did indicate when I was making the presentation that part and parcel of that poor settlement is as a consequence of an inheritance from a segregated way of planning, which lost the opportunity to create efficiencies in how you would plan a densified city. So that's the first issue that I would like to say in response. The second issue that I would like to say in response to the question around overpopulation and poor settlements is that what we are learning from outside, Honorable Teza, from outside South Africa, when we exchange with other colleagues from other cities, the cities are being encouraged to densify. In other words, utilize as little space as possible to settle people. And it has been proven that by densifying, you create a lot of efficiency. So if in a 10 square meter area, just to use that as an example, you are able to accommodate more than one family. You use the same pipe to supply water to the more than one family, rather than the current system that we have where we are not densifying. You use the same road, you use the same water infrastructure, you use the same sewer infrastructure to still be able to deliver services whilst you're accommodating many people in as much of a small space as possible. There are, of course, models on this, and I'm not the one that will advocate for the American style of densification of 2 tall buildings. In other countries, Europe in particular, their densifications are 4 stories high rather than 32 stories. So cities differ and the planning departments differ in how it is that they respond to the issue or to the challenge of densification. I hope I'm dealing with the question as I sort of understood it. So the third part of the response, Chair, is that the creation of new cities is a big debate. And let me give a practical example. At the turn of democracy, let me use Johannesburg as a city. A new city had emerged in Johannesburg, in the Johannesburg Metropolitan Municipality. It was called Sandton. It allowed for flight of capital away from what we now call the CBD into Sandton. And it left the inner city empty, and some of the owners who own buildings not being able to take care of those buildings, and some of those buildings got hijacked. That has been the adverse effect of conducting, of creating new cities without balancing what it is that should be happening in the old part of the city. So there are pros and cons that have been debated by researchers and scholars on the issue of the creation of new cities. Does that mean new cities should not be created? I don't think so. I think the debate is not about whether new cities should be created or not, because the creation of new cities is able to exploit the existence of innovation, technology, and the likes to make cities more efficient, because retrofitting an already existing city with new technologies also tends to have its own negative effect. Chair, you asked a question about what lessons from the EPWP work can be learned for the community works program. There's many, Chair, and perhaps that could be another long discussion. The work we've done with public works program around how to roll out the EPWP has given us lessons on how it is that cities can actually use the community works program to create not just job opportunities, but to also create employment if it is utilized well. So there are lessons, and again, if you indulge me, I could share lessons learned from that can have applicability in the community works program. I did not write this question in full. I know you mentioned EPWP and CWP, but there's also another program that you had mentioned, Chair. Perhaps I didn't catch all of that, but you can allow me to come back to it if I have not answered the question adequately. But the long and short is, yes, there are lessons from the work that we have done around EPWP that can be applied in the community works program. Are we going to use a conference to launch this 5th edition of the State of Cities report? In all likelihood, Chair, we are not going to use a conference in the manner in which conferences had been organized before. Chair, just to say, last month, we were organizing in conjunction with all our partners that we work with, from COCTA to the Cities Support Program. Last month, we engaged in an urban festival, something equivalent to an urban conference. So in previous years, we would have an urban conference, but precisely because of the environments of lockdown and COVID and having to comply, clearly we were not going to gather people to have face-to-face discussions. And so we organized a virtual conference, which was attended by no less than 4,000 people. And we harvested quite a number of ideas in response to the urban question, which report again we can share with the portfolio committee, of course, through COCTA, who are our principal, which has harvested a number of ideas which ideas we think we would need to package as we report to COCTA in such a manner that some of them can become pilot projects to explore some of the innovations that all of society is currently engaged upon. So I doubt very much, Chair, if we will have a physical launch. It will probably be a virtual launch. And yes, we will launch the State of the South African Cities report. Chair, you also asked what contribution can we make into the debate about rural urban. Chair, as we say in the IUDF policy document, which I indicated earlier, we were the principal authors of the Integrated Urban Development Framework. Chair, we don't think that there should be a dichotomy or a division, both in our minds and in how we articulate policy. There shouldn't be a division between rural and urban. That division ought to be artificial, really. The reason we say this is because we are of the strong opinion that if we want strong rural areas, we need to build strong cities. But in converse as well, if we want strong cities, we must build strong rural areas. So it's not either rural or urban. In fact, in part to what Honorable Teza was saying, we have to develop a strong rural agenda. Unfortunately, it is not in our forte as the South African Cities Network to have a direct focus on rural development. We've been focusing on urban development. Do we make contributions? Certainly. When the National Spatial Development Perspective was being developed by colleagues in land affairs, we were part and parcel of that committee throughout that duration, sharing with them how it is that urban and rural linkages can be created, sharing with them why it is important not to only focus on rural areas and metropolitan areas, but also develop the intermediate cities because they exist for a reason. So we made those arguments. Hence, in the National Spatial Development Perspective as it exists now, one will see the differentiation of the role of different spaces in South Africa, utilizing their own advantage or their natural advantage as well. So we have made those particular contributions in the debate. We have made submissions, where required about how and why it is necessary not to dichotomize the urban and rural and speak about rural versus urban instead of talking about rural and urban, because these are two sides of the same hand, at least in terms of our own thinking about the political management of the debate around urban and rural. So we don't see the dichotomy at all. Honorable Tlo, we have not done work that looks at mechanisms for consequence management at all. So I will not even venture into that field. So in other words, we have not had a research program whose role it is to look at the human capital management, the agenda of human capital management and HR and all of those things. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. Chair, if you can, I did the last question that Honorable Joe posed. I did not write it in full, so I'm trying to read it and it's confusing me. I don't know if it could be relayed again so that I can attempt to answer it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, do we have follow-up questions? That will allow Honorable Joe to also rephrase the last question, which he didn't capture properly. In my case, CEO, what I was asking, you have reported the reference work on the extended public work programs.
Oh, yeah. It was safety, yes.
Then
okay.
The issue here, you know, the department has got challenges with regard to the community works program. You know that that's an area that makes the department to get qualified audit opinion. I've read their past 3 financial year audit outcomes. They deal with this, and then it's a major contributor to the department getting adverse opinions on this matter. So we wanted to understand, to say, what lessons can you draw from your extensive reference group or work group on the EPWP in order to inform the redesign and the repurposing of the Communities Works Program, CW program, which happened to be the program of the department. That's what we wanted clarity from on your part. If it's a matter that you have not ventured into, you can see that you have not ventured into that one. It's a matter that you will consider in the nearby future. This is the matter that you can deal with that. Mato, are you here?
Okay, thank you, Chairperson.
The last part of your question was not clear.
Okay, Chairperson Kialego. I said another issue is with regard to the poor service delivery that is unprogressive in municipalities that you have mentioned that you have intervened. Since your intervention, did you yield any good results? I thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah, in particular, you can cite the case of Umsundus. As you have said that any positive result, we've just interacted with Umsundus a month ago as this committee.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks very much to Honorable Dlo. On the issue of achieving good results in Umsunduzi, I would like to share with the committee that our interventions necessarily are not operational. In other words, we don't get through our interventions get to that point where we can even tell the operational staff or make suggestions to the operational staff on what to do. Our interventions are always about the strategic issues, for lack of a better word. In other words, what is the direction that this particular institution is taking? What kind of a machinery do you put in place so that a new direction, once crafted, can be followed successfully? Who do we bring as support? Do we bring DBSA? Do we bring National Treasury? Do we bring COGTA, SALGA? What type of skills do you bring in order that once the institution was stuck and you unstuck it, and then it is able to move? And when it starts moving, we will stand back because it is not our role to be involved in operational issues. I just wanted to say that so that when I provide the answer to Honorable Dlo, there's an understanding of how far we can go as an organization. And of course, with the fact that we do not have all the skills. Have our interventions yielded results? Yes, they have. And I'm gonna just start, I'll come to Msundus, but let me just start with the Buffalo City municipality. There was a time in 2011, 2012, 2013, when Buffalo City was on a downward spiral as an institution with lots of instability, lots of governance issues. And colleagues in Buffalo City managed to call us, and what we did was to put an intervention team that was constituted on behalf of the BCM, that was constituted by a number of organizations, as I indicated, COGTA, DBSA, the Office of the Auditor General, so that we can corral around the problem and find ways of solving it. And we managed to bring stability to that particular organization. I cannot say that after we had left the institution, then it was stable forever. But as we speak, comparatively speaking, Honorable Dlo, that organization is still stable up to now. And I cannot claim, Chairperson, easy victories and argue that it was only because of the South African Cities Network. But what I can say is that the Cities Network was involved intricately, facilitating, driving processes, communicating, creating partnerships, and getting everybody involved behind supporting the municipality to get back on its feet, on its feet. And so that intervention I can take as one of them that was successful. As I indicated earlier, Chair, the success of the Cities Network is very much highly dependent on how receptive the organization which we are seeking to assist or provide help is. Where it is not receptive, we cannot go in, because we believe in this issue of being demand driven. In Umsunduzi, for the last 2 years, we had been working with colleagues there until a point where we were party to shall I say, a contribution that says there was a need to bring in a city manager. As we speak now, there is a new city manager that has been put in place. There is some form of stability, comparatively speaking, to what Umsunduzi was 2 years ago. Yes, Umsunduzi at this point in time, there's still going to be issues of service delivery that are there, precisely because the municipality is in a financial strain. But we are certain that with the team that advises and provides suggestions on the financial recovery model, which is led by National Treasury and is supported by us. So people like TV Pillay are there. We are certain that that municipality over the next period, perhaps by the year 2022-23, it will be out of the woods if it follows the advice that it has been given. Lastly, Chair, around our interventions, I think, Chair, it's quite important for me to say from where we are as the Cities Network, we don't think that these interventions on their own will be able to be successful. We think it's quite important that the interventions are not the Cities Network, but there's a collective of an effort amongst all stakeholders that purport themselves to be providers of support to municipality. Where we are, from where we stand now, we think it's very important that data is set at the forefront of the interventions that we that are being made. There's something in the analysis of data, and by the way, I did not mention that we've got an open data almanac. I wanted to make reference to it when Honorable Celiers was asking the question about our value add. We have put together an open data almanac called the South African Cities Open Data Almanac, which gives data as it comes from the municipalities, and it is collected and put under one tool for everybody to access without having to pay money for it, because we do not believe that data should be bought when in fact data is being produced by public sector institutions such as municipalities. There's one other value add that I can make mention of and strongly in this particular meeting. So we think that the next set of interventions, working in conjunction with the district or through the district development model, are going to require quality data, the type of quality data that allows for intelligent decision-making. And when I say intelligent, I don't mean clever, I mean intelligence in the form of real data, understanding what's happening at a cadastral space in the municipalities, understanding the linkages between the various sets of infrastructure that exist, being able to articulate how those sets of infrastructure can be utilized to create new jobs, to create new economies, to exploit the green agenda and all of those things. These are not things that are impossible, but I think they need effort, and that effort requires it requires data. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay. Thank you so much, CEO. I don't see any follow-up question. Can I allow the chairman to say something before I hand over to the DM to say something before we close this meeting?
Thank you very much, Chair. There is nothing much to say on my side, except to express appreciation around the conversation that we have just had and the insight on the operations of the Cities Network.
It's a clear sign that you are a beneficiary of the activities of the network. I would say that.
Yes, Chair, yeah, to a certain extent, yes.
If there isn't much to say, then it's a clear sign indication. Can I hand over to you, DM Down.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members, and to the chair of the Cities Network and the CEO and all colleagues present. Just to make a few comments on my side. The first is the general observation that municipalities, in particular metropolitan municipalities, invest significantly in the collation of data, in research, and in benchmarking. So in many ways, trying to continuously find ways of creating their own institutions to be able to do this objectively and benchmark against each other remains an important thing that I think the metropolitan municipalities should do. Indeed, also the intermediary municipalities should be able to benefit from such research and data. So I do think that the work of the Cities Network remains relevant from that point of view. There'll always be, as there's been a discussion for some time as to whether the network should evolve, whether it should be part of SALGA, whether it should be restructured, whether it should expand its scope and mandate, including research, including on fundraising, including in certain instances charging for certain services that it provides to municipalities to the extent that this could become a revenue stream. I believe that those debates should continue to take place. And as we continue to find solutions, we should start implementing some of those solutions. The other point I thought I should make is that our cities, in particular our metropolitan municipalities, play an important role, not just in their own geographic spaces, but indeed for the whole country. In terms of the extent of urbanization, the levels of employment, the agglomeration benefits of city development, and a whole range of contributions that cities make, including being the centers of economic activity. So to the extent that you require intelligence to be located in the cities themselves, I think it is important. What we need to encourage is that the member municipalities optimize on the services that they receive from the Cities Network. As observed earlier, many of the municipalities do pay different agencies for data collation and collection and a whole range of other intelligence-based knowledge. And to the extent that they could be able to use an institution that essentially is owned by the cities themselves, I believe we could enhance the benefit that we get and invest less in terms of the resources that would be required. I think the CEO and the chair also emphasized the point that the Cities Network is also considered as an important coordination mechanism, not only of the cities themselves, but coordination and liaison with not just COPTA, but other departments, particularly on critical policy processes. And from that point of view, became the Secretariat of the Development of the Integrated Urban Development Framework, in as much as they've been playing that role in the revision of the implementation framework of the Integrated Urban Development Framework. So from that point of view, I think that they become in many ways a center around which we can all coordinate, not just as COCTA, but with other departments and also in their liaison with those other departments. So Chair, I do think that it has been a valuable discussion, and some of the points raised by the honorable members should indeed be taken into account by the Cities Network and all stakeholders. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much, DM Down. I think as a way forward, we should then welcome the presentation and also appreciate your attendance, Chairman of the Council, Councillor Pakati, and the CEO. Then when we start next year, I should think we must be able to engage all these 8 metros, in particular to your area of work. And it will be good by virtue that, and then you will be working also towards the production of the report, of the city's, State of the City's report. And then so that we start to also inculcate the work that we are doing. The beauty about it, we were dealing with Mangao earlier this morning, as you have rightfully said, CEO, as a committee. And then we couldn't interrogate their responses fully. I'm thinking we've given them up to Thursday to submit written responses. I should think next week we'll be able to then reschedule them for them to come and talk to us on their responses to the issues that were of concerns to us during the day. I think we can also infuse the issues that you have been raising, especially on them not coming to the party. But nevertheless, the other issue that I will ask you to explore, maybe talking to Deputy Minister Rapella, of course, Deputy Minister Tau being the team leader. Then this issue of the rural-urban migration that affect the cities, I think you need to start some engagement with the National House, with both the National House of Traditional Leaders, including both the provincial houses of traditional leadership, because as we continue, those rural areas, in fact, what we have learned out of our engagement last week with the National House of Traditional Leadership, they are saying they have become development agents. They are producing development agents in their areas. I think for you to also then start to then interact with those traditional leaders that are closer to these cities, that are closer to them, it can go a long way in also forging partnership and see how then can explore working with them. But nevertheless, we want to appreciate you taking your time for coming here, and then we'll expect you to also give us those written responses latest by 12 hours on Friday, so that then we can be able to then produce our close-up report in terms of us interacting with you. Then it has been an early night for a change, but we've been very busy today, colleagues. I think let's call it a night. Thank you, Deputy Minister, for coming. Then the meeting gets adjourned. We are meeting tomorrow at 9. I'm just trying to quickly check what are we doing. Can somebody quickly help me? I suspect it's Nakamudiri in the morning, and then in the evening it should be the province of Northwest. Yes, I'm trying to. Yes, yeah. Tomorrow morning we're interacting on the state of Nakamudiri Mulima district municipality. I think including Matosana. Am I right? Yeah, that's what we have said. And then we'll again meet in the evening, the MEC of traditional, of cooperative governance and traditional affairs will be briefing us on the progress on the section 139 interventions. I made to understand there's a newly shown message, but I believe whoever was acting will have done a handover and then collectively come together to come and present on those matters as raised with them. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. You can at least have an early night tonight till we meet at 9 in the morning. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Good night.
Chair.
Bye-bye. So.
Bye-bye. Mr. was he here tonight?
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
Hey, that is it.
Bye-bye.
Good
Bye-bye,
night.
Lutuli.